Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Being Spiritual with me, your host, Ashley Robinson. 26th of March and 8 o'clock feels like a milestone, feels like we're heading in the right direction. And I'm grateful for those of you joining us live on YouTube tonight. And of course, anyone watching this at a different time, thanks for watching the playback. If you are joining us for the first time, a special first welcome to you. A couple of housekeeping rules, certainly for new people and perhaps those coming back again. Do make sure you subscribe, please, to Spiritual Psychics TV and our production team, Richard James in the studio. You don't want to miss any of the videos. You might be watching live on Facebook or YouTube tonight. Do try and visit the other platforms too. Make sure you subscribe to Spiritual Psychics TV on YouTube. Find the main page on Facebook. And of course, if you're a fan of this show and a fan of other shows, think about joining the SPTV fan page on Facebook. And for all of those social media lovers, you'll also find Spiritual Psychics TV on Instagram and on Twitter, as well as me at Ash Robinson Medium. That's at Ash Robinson Medium, both on Facebook and Instagram. Well, friends, okay, it is lovely to have you with us this evening, and I'm sorry if that was coming out a bit loud and clear, or too loud and clear for some of you. Tonight's show is going to be about the scientific background. The scientific background to my philosophy, not necessarily the scientific background to everything. That would probably need an entire year of shows dedicated to the very subject. But I'm going to talk a little bit about my spiritualist philosophy and the scientific background to that. We're coming up, I think in June will mark about 12 months of doing these shows every other week. And we've now got about a year into the Spiritual Divine Service on Sunday mornings. And I've taken people on a bit of a journey. I think we're probably approaching, something like 18, 19 shows now. And I've taken you through the different sort of milestones in my spiritual philosophy. And tonight's all going to be about the scientific background. So make sure you throw in your questions. I'll give it my very best go at answering. Now, if you do want to participate in the show tonight and ask those questions, if you're on YouTube, you need to have logged in. YouTube account is free. Once you've logged in, you're looking for the live chat function and you'll be able to engage with us. For those of you joining on Facebook, you can comment on the video, but do make sure that you're commenting on the original video, which has come from Spiritual Psychics TV. If someone has shared it as part of a watch party, your comments will only be seen there. So if you do want to participate in the show, make sure that we can see those comments. And certainly from a questions point of view, I'll make sure that I try and answer all of those questions for you this evening. Now, I'm not doing any free readings or clairvoyance tonight. I'll give you some adverts later. That's historically on Saturday nights and other shows. But tonight is spiritualist philosophy, and I'd like to do a couple of other hellos and welcomes to see who might be joining us and where you might be from. Now, if you're a first-time viewer, let us know where in the world you're watching this from. Starla K. Weir says hello. Hi there, Starla. Sheena Patterson, hi from Scotland. I'm down in South London, Sheena, so Scotland feels like my glamorous loft at times. Roslyn Butter, good evening to you. I do look forward to getting back up to Scotland soon. Beautiful part of the world. Teresa Thatcher, lovely friend and medium, was on our Divine Service broadcast on Spiritual Psychic TV at the weekend. Polly Harnett, good evening to you. Really looking forward to collaborating with you, Polly, and others. We'll tell you more about that later, folks. Kim, good evening to you, Kim. She says hi to everybody. Hi there, Kim. B. Tara Angels, good evening to you, B. Natasha, hi, first time joining us. Lovely to have you with us, Natasha. Welcome. Becca, hi there, Becca. How's it going? Welcome. My good friend Julie Caswell, good evening to you, Julie. Debbie, hi, first time from Debbie. Hi, Debbie. I think she's joined us on Facebook. Welcome, Debbie. Tonight's about spiritualist philosophy. Good evening, Ashley from Mum and Dad. Hello, Mum and Dad. My mum keeps telling my dad off because when he comments, he never says that Mum's there and always only say hello to him. So hello, Mum. Lena, hi, Lena. Is that Lena? Your first time as well. Good to have you on the show joining us this evening. And Amy Jane from the New Forest area, also a beautiful part of the world. Hi there, Amy Jane. Tracy Hearn, good evening to you. I do private readings. I'm not doing any tonight. Say Saturday night at 8 o'clock, you'll get free private readings on the show, and you'll also see that Sunday mornings and a couple of times during the week. So if that was a more general question, most of the presenters do them, but yeah, not this evening. Mary Dixie, my last circle leader. Hi, Mary. Good evening to you. Zoe Hoss, or Hoss Zoe. Good evening to you. Hope all is well with you. Thank you. I'm doing well. And got a hi there from Birmingham. Hi, Joanne Lewis. Good evening. Bradley James. Hi, it's Gary Walker in disguise. You seem to have a different name every week. But yeah, thanks for revealing who you are, Gaz. Good to have you on the show, mate. Some new lessons for all of us tonight on the scientific background. Hi, Joanne. Lynn Taylor says, hi there, Lynn. For those of you on Facebook, if you are on Facebook, you can share this stream. So do consider sharing this stream. Let your friends know you're watching a show, Being Spiritual on Spiritual Psychics TV tonight. Perhaps tag a friend that might join you, or perhaps share the stream afterwards. Michelle Jane, she's new here as well. Lots of new viewers this evening. Hi, Michelle. Great to have you with us. If you're on YouTube, you do need to come out of the live chat and look for the right forward arrow. You can then copy the link to this stream. You can embed that into Facebook, Twitter, email, WhatsApp, that sort of stuff. Share this link with people. And I know that for some of you, if that becomes too challenging and multitasking, think about doing it afterwards. Share the show. Olivia Louise says, good evening, everyone. Looking forward to this evening. Hi, Olivia. I'm glad you're looking forward to it. It's lovely to have you with us tonight. Leticia, I think I'm hopefully pronouncing that right. Leticia Ramirez. Good evening from Iowa in USA. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us, Letty. Stay sure. Hello, my friend. Terry Wall, another long-time viewer. We'll have to start thinking about awards, Richard, for people that have been watching you continuously. There's some great familiar faces and lovely to see new people. Sue Carroll, also newbie to the show. Good evening, Sue. It's lovely to have so many new people. I'm trying to think of some difficult questions. I'm sure you are. I think before I even tell you what the subject are, you come up with some difficult questions. But it's great for me too, isn't it? It's great for learning and thinking about these things. You've got a difficult question, Richard. Okay. What are the lottery ticket numbers? That's the question you get asked a lot, don't you, as a psychic? I mean, as a psychic, we should also be. I should be telling you how you are, and you can tell me how I am. That's the way these things do. But fortune telling still pretty difficult because the future's not yet written. We got a hi there from Wales and Diane. Hi, Diane. And I'll just do one more from Becky. Hi there, Becky. And thank you to everyone else that I've not been able to mention. And Richard says hi to you, Becky. Lovely to have you all here. Sorry if I haven't actually mentioned your name, but know that we're getting the comments and we'll be multitasking, or Richard will be multitasking. Makes it nice and easy for me. So tonight's show, the scientific background. And I'm going to sort of caveat the fact that it's scientific background based on my honest, humble opinion, in the same way I've always said that my spiritual philosophy is mine. It's my foundation for my spiritualism, and I encourage you to explore your own. I'll only ever share with you things that I believe to be the truth, and the truths that I've become, to sort of see as the truth as I've seen them. And for me, my scientific background, I should caveat, I don't have a doctorate, PhD, or degree in hi, Jim. I've got a GCSE, two GCSEs, only at grade C in science from about 21 years ago. So my science knowledge is limited to that and sort of common sense. But I'll be caveating it, and we're going to be covering a number of different sort of scientific versus or science versus spiritualism things tonight, which is quite difficult to a show we'll probably do next month, which will be about religion and religions of the world and spiritualism and answers within the Bible to spiritualism. So tonight we're going to focus on that. Hiya, Christine. And one of the first things that I wanted to talk about is Curly Land photography. Now, we've mentioned auras and healing. We've spoke about chakras a few times on the show. So I thought tonight I'll give you the scientific explanation for that. We've used that term, what scientists say, a few times. I've spoke about heaven being a place of pure thought, of pure love, a place that scientists might say of pure energy. And we're going to talk a little bit about what science says. That's going to be my term. So for those of you that want to reuse this YouTube video as a drinking game in the future, you can do a shot every time I say "and scientists say." I'm joking, of course. As spiritual people, we never mix spirits, but we might do them separately. Okay, so Kirlian photography. What's all that about then? Well, there's a little bit of history, and I did some more research into this because in the early years of the 20th century in Russia, there was a chap that I want to introduce you to called Semen Davidosh Kurlian. Hiya, Bernice. And this person achieved local fame as an electrical engineer, and they used to repair all sorts of different electrical appliances. Now, this person was particularly interested in the works of one Nicholas Tesla, one of the legendary scientists of his day, and many of his theories are still studied today. Now, I want to take you back to 1939. I don't think many of our viewers will remember that year, but Kurlian was watching a patient, and this patient was being treated in a high frequency electrotherapy machine. And what he saw was a very small spark jump from that machine onto the patient's skin. And he was absolutely fascinated by this. And he wondered whether or not it'd be possible to photograph it. And he experimented by photographing his own hand in similar circumstances. And he succeeded. He was able to see that spark. And his experiments continued and continued. And what he effectively was showing was an electrical aura around his own hand. Now, over the next 10 years or so, him and his wife did lots of different types of experiments on what they were describing as this phenomenon. And they were able to reproduce that effect without the camera at all. They were able to do it just with the photographic film. And for those of you that have ever studied photography, and I remember doing this at school in GCSEs, it's an incredible thing about exposing sort of photographic film and capturing images. I remember making a photograph, which was just a box with a sort of a pinprick hole. Incredible things you can do that. Hiya, Sally. Well, they were able to capture this with the film, and they started to get the electrical reactions as things were actually happening. So further experiments on nature, and in particular trees and leaves, started to show that they were picking up undetected diseases within these plants, and they were working out that you could see this on the photographs themselves long before they actually appeared in physical reality. So, being fascinated by this concept, they continued those experiments, and they then turned to photographing the human body. They started to produce images that started to show a network of electrical points. And these electrical points on the body corresponded with the traditional acupuncture points and the meridians. And what they were proving in scientific terms was the things that had been observed in the plants about the early prediction of the diseases. It was just as valid in the photos of the human body. And after scientific recognition of the techniques was granted in 1961, formal Russian state research was done on this concept. And it was later reported that many of the doctors all over Russia and in other parts of Europe and the world started to be trained in the use of this photographic technique and the study of the colors of the auras produced, as it could help with the early diagnose of the disease. Absolutely incredible. Now, as an aside, since Kirlian photography proves that there is a system of acupuncture points in the body, this ties up with another couple of ancient ideas, including the Chinese idea of acupuncture or meridians. And that Chinese system has links to an Indian tradition of energy centers known as chakras. So it can be argued that Kirlian photography proves scientifically the existence of chakras. Now, I've mentioned that I have a limited knowledge of chakras. We've spoke about meditation and healing and working as a medium. But effectively, what scientists are saying is we know the chakras exist. We've got photographic, scientific evidence of them. Now, as Kirlian photography is concerned, they're now very highly developed cameras which are used to show the aura of individuals. And you can see this dynamically in a screen in front of you. You can also have photocopies or digital pictures of these. And I've seen them at different sort of mind, body, spirit sort of festivals all over the place. And I may give you some information about a spiritual and psychic weekend in spring and March at the end of the show. So watch out for that in the adverts. What a fantastic thing. Science meets spiritualism. And they weren't necessarily trying to prove that at the time. They continued with those experiments. So I want to then segue into chakras. But of course, as I say anything, folks, if there are questions you want to ask, do throw them in. I'll try and answer them as we go along. Otherwise, certainly, probably in the next 20 minutes, half an hour, we'll stop. Hiya, Rachel. Good evening to you. Now, chakras then. So, what is chakra? Well, I had to do some research, and a couple of weeks ago, I think on the show, when I was talking about healing and chakras, no, it was with Bill Hughes, wasn't it? So it was 2 weeks ago, and Bill Hughes was talking about his formal training and how when he started to learn to be a medium to deliver messages, he worked by opening up the chakras. And I admitted that despite being born into spiritualism, being aware of them, I still had very little working knowledge. So I took this as a challenge to go and do some more research on exactly what the words meant as well. And I learnt that it actually is an ancient language, an ancient Sanskrit language, and it was in the ritual language of Hindus and Hinduism. It was also known in both Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism. And effectively, what does the word mean? It means will, and it's used to describe the spiritual energy centers of the body and this aspect of a will. We've mentioned the acupuncture meridians of the body, which can be proved to exist with the Kirlian photography. And some mediums are able to see auras. They're also aware of how parts of the body are different colors in the aura, seem to be particularly concentrated. And there was a show just before Christmas. I had my mum on the show. My mum is certainly someone that works with colors, works with auras. There are also just very sensitive and empathetic people that pick up on this energy. Now, with the chakras then, and thinking about the different colors in the aura, what most people tend to agree on is that the colors tend to be particularly concentrated, and they appear to be, hi there, Han B, they appear to be in a straight line right down the center of the body in front of the spine, and traditionally each separate area is associated with a different part of the body, or more specifically a bodily system, a different gland and a different color. And you'll see this Google chakras, you'll see that those colors replicated all over the world. You'll see it on posters and key rings, you'll see it taught in circles, but there are some very common standards. And effectively, the areas are called chakras because when someone that can see a chakra sees them, they see them as this wheel spinning around. Now, scientists tell us, there we go, scientists tell us that everything in the universe is composed of atoms. Now, bear in mind that I'm only going to take this up to about GCSE level C. Scientists tell us that everything in the universe is composed of atoms. Now, we know that all of those atoms are vibrating and that each atom contains an enormous amount of energy. So, the whole of the universe is composed of energy. Spiritualists also agree that energy is everything and everything is energy. But the view of what spiritual energy is differs from the scientific view. Hiya, Tina. To a spiritualist, to me as a spiritualist in particular, spiritual energy, as well as being a very high level of physical energy at the top of our dimension, and I'll talk about dimensions in a bit, is also the life force of the organism. And all human beings are in as much need of this life force as they are in need of food and drink. And I love that word life force. One of my favorite films, Star Wars, talks about the concept of the force. May the force be with you. And may the force be with you, friends. Life force, really, really important, as important as water, food, and drink. So, just as we have physical organs which allow us to take in and digest that nourishment that comes from food and drink, so we have spiritual organs which allow us to take in this life force or the divine energy. Now, these spiritual organs, I believe, are the chakras. And in general terms, this life force, I believe, comes in through the crown chakra. Hi, Alison. Through the crown chakra, that energy, that life force is then distributed via the other major chakras in the body. Now, the crown chakra, I believe, is situated at the top of our bodies, the top of the head. I always imagine it just above my mind's eye. Now, in very highly evolved beings, evolved people, very spiritual people, they say that as this life force enters, what it is for all of us is a light. Those that are more evolved or more spiritual, regardless of their religion beliefs, that light becomes even brighter, even whiter. And in very highly evolved beings, they said that the light is so intense it can actually be seen with ordinary men and women, boys and girls, through our sight. Now, if we think about history, we think about legends, we think about Christianity and other major religions, this white light being seen as a white haze around the head, I believe that legends and pictures of people like the Master Jesus, the apostles, having that halo, that is a description of that aura, of that life force going into the body. Now, the crown chakra is associated with the pineal gland and with the reception of spiritual communication. Hi, Cheryl. People used to say in some of the ancient scripts that you could see Jesus's aura for miles and miles. People spoke about Buddha, hundreds of miles. You could feel his presence, you could see him. And again, go to a film like Star Wars, they talk about a disturbance in the force, they talk about feeling the presence. I think that Hollywood is not too far off, and at the beneath of some of that is a spiritual understanding. Maybe we do an entire show and Hollywood meets spiritualism. Tim says the shake of spiritual energy that can expose the spiritual life force with a physical life force is understood by the layman that there are 7 chakras. Well, indeed, there are actually over 100. Thank you, Tim. Some lovely knowledge there. Indeed, I agree with you. There are 7 major chakras, and certainly as far as I understand them, I think it makes it easier for us to understand. And when you Google it and you see the pictures and the colors on key rings, you see the 7. These are certainly the most well known. But I'm aware only again through research and through knowledge over probably the last 10 years that there are many, many more. Tim says there are about 100. I've become aware at sort of practical level around probably another 20. But again, I'm still learning. I'm still taking a spiritual advancement every day. Now, in terms of the minor chakras or the other chakras, all of which have to do, I believe, with different health and different parts of the body. I want to tell you just about a couple because my eldest, Ethan, is going to be 6 on Sunday. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. Hi, Ashley Mills. Good evening to you. This was really important for me when Claire was pregnant with Ethan because I learnt through first time parenting classes the NHS message: breast is best when it comes to feeding and trying to have skin to skin, close contact with babies, and how all the various benefits of breast milk could be. And ultimately, I wanted to support my partner. I said that anything was possible, and obviously, we both wanted to explore this concept. And I remember speaking to a very good friend of mine, I often talk about this show, Mr. Ralph A. Steadman. And we're talking about chakras, and he had said to me that some of the more interesting minor chakras are those in the nipples of women's breasts and the palms of her hand. Now, he said to me, these have very little to do with physical health of the woman, but have a great importance for any baby which she might bear. And in recent years, bottle feeding has become more and more common for babies, but the traditional breastfeeding is greatly preferable. That's that sort of NHS breast is best. But babies are effectively taking in, I believe, life force through the chakras in the nipples, and at the same time they're taking in their physical nourishment. So I believe that that's how it can work. So there are thousands, if not millions of years worth of history of why breast milk for babies is important. I also absolutely respect that not everyone is able to breastfeed or wants to breastfeed, but I became fascinated because I understood these 7 chakras. Hi, Mandy, welcome. That actually there could be chakras all over the body. Tim mentioned about 100 there, and I started to learn about these minor ones around the nipples in the breast. Now, as they were taking in the life force through the mother's hands as well, hence the importance of skin to skin contact, and of course, how babies feel when we pick babies up. Chakras, energy, life force. Now, Going back then to the main chakras as I understand them, I spoke about Mary Dixie, one of my circle leaders, to their other circle leaders, Christine Woodham, sometimes on this show, Jill Hay, who now lives in that place I call heaven. All of this was kind of taught to me as a medium, starting to learn about this, but I also learned a lot about it as a teenager, trying to ground myself and to meditate. And I'm just going to go through what I believe to be the common colors and names. Hi there, Gillian. So the white crown chakra, through which the life force is received, so at the top of the head. The next one, I believe, is the brow chakra. And this is normally seen by clairvoyants, other mediums, as indigo in color. And it's associated with the pituitary gland and receiving spiritual communication. The throat chakra, often seen as a sapphire blue in color, it's associated with the thyroid gland and the metabolism. The heart chakra is often seen as emerald green in color. It's associated with the thymus gland, the white blood cells, antibodies, and the nervous system. And then the solar plexus chakra, often seen as yellow in color, and it's associated with the pancreas gland and food digestion. And then you have the sacral chakra, which is often seen as orange in color, associated with the sex glands, and the base chakra, often red in color and associated with adrenal glands, which control responses to stress. So Cheryl Boxall says, so the colostrum, I suppose, is life force. I think it's both, Cheryl. It's the physical nourishment and all that goodness that the mother's able to produce. And I do feel that there's an element of life force, that invisible energy we can't see with our eyes. So they're the main seven chakras as I sort of came to know them. They're often the seven, I say, you'll see in things like key rings and posters. And the study of chakras is a huge subject. Indeed, we could dedicate not just an entire show to this, but probably several months on chakras alone. And as Tim said, there's potentially hundreds of them. So do go off and do your own bit of research. And for anyone that is starting to learn or has started to learn, no doubt you've come across this. It's a big part of understanding how you can distribute that energy. And I think that for me, from a scientific point of view, it links to that Kirlian photography, because the photography and scientists have proved that they exist, those energy portals, those wheels, those energy wheels. And if we note about what's happening with chakras, so we think about people that claim they can read them, people like my mum that see the colors, that can understand the chakras. We also get people that are just very sensitive, great empaths, and they can often pick up on the strong emotions of their clients. Kaylee, good evening to you, my friend. She said, this is so interesting. I'm currently breastfeeding my youngest baby. Great, Kaylee, and congratulations to you. No doubt sharing some life force, I like to believe. Okay, so that is chakras in a nutshell. And as I said, loads of stuff there that you can go off and do a bit of research in. Tim, you already shared a little bit of that. Thank you for doing that. Hi, Alison. If other people have got any thoughts or comments, do whack it in the live chat. And if you've got any questions on chakras or the photography aspect we've spoke about, then let me know. Oh, look, Christine Woodham. Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late. Was watching Puppets Been Unborn. So we were just talking about you in a good way a minute ago, Christine. I was talking about how you and Mary had taught me through those seven chakras as a younger man. So we spoke about chakras and we spoke about energy. And I talk about energy vibrating. So I now want to talk about spiritual vibrations and how perhaps they are different, and more importantly, how they are the same as what scientists would refer to as vibrations. So is there any real difference? In my opinion, with my very limited knowledge of science and spiritualism, no. Vibrations are vibrations. The only real differences between spiritual and scientific ones are perhaps the frequencies. Now, scientists tell us the whole of the universe is composed of atoms, minute specks of matter so small we can't even see them with our own eyes. We have to use magnifying glasses and high-powered lenses. We can't see them with the naked eye. But every atom contains a core or a nucleus, and round that nucleus spin a number of tiny particles called electrons. The movement of the electrons round the nucleus creates vibrations. And I'm sure we dedicated several terms to that at school. If anyone from Stanley Park High School is watching, that managed to stick with me. Ashley talks about the chakra colors change as people raise their spiritual vibrations. Yeah, well cued, Ashley. And I know that you've run some lovely workshops at our spiritual and psychic weekends, and also at the churches, both at your home church at Walton-on-Thames and at Wimbledon, on colour, the importance of understanding that. But yes, different vibrations. So what's a really simple way to understand that? Because although that's managed to stick with me for the last 21 years on atoms, physically we see vibrations differently. Sometimes we can't see them at all. And one of the best explanations I ever got this was my good friend Ralph again, who understood a bit more about music. And he had a guitar. And what he did is, with using his guitar, hi there, Siobhan. Good to have you. Siobhan O'Rourke, welcome. The bottom string on the guitar was really thick and it was heavy compared to the other strings on the guitar. And when he plucked it, it produced a very sort of, musically speaking, very low musical note. And got that. He said to me, look, it vibrates so slowly that you can see it with your physical eyes. You can see the string moving backwards and forwards. Got it. The next string up is much finer. It's lighter. It's faster and it vibrates faster. So fast, the movement can barely or hardly be seen with my physical eyes. And each string as we went up the guitar is finer and lighter than the preceding one and produces a higher note until the top string vibrates so fast that no physical movement of that string can be seen at all. And it produces a very high note. Now, the number of times the string vibrates every second is called the frequency of the vibration. Hi, Stephanie. That vibration, in scientific terms, is usually measured in hertz. So the middle C note on a piano, which has 256 vibrations per second, or so I'm led to believe, that is measured at 256 hertz. For those that don't know, I was actually at a Music and Me lesson with both my boys today, and lovely teacher Libby. I was asking her about hertz and vibrations, and she sort of looked at me a bit dazed, but I think that that is correct. If there are any pianists on here, middle C piano, 256 vibrations per second, 256 hertz. Hi, Natasha. So when all the strings of the guitar were played at the time, the guitar is strummed, and that produces your music on your guitar, the musical chords, in which notes of different frequencies are all heard at exactly the same time. So let's go back to Stanley Park High School, Ashley's GCSE understanding. Atoms. Since the electrons in each atom are creating vibrations, and every atom in the universe is vibrating, and the universe itself is vibrating, as is everything, including us. So each human being is made up of lots of different levels of energy at different frequencies, different vibrations. Hi, Stephanie Jones. There is a level of the physical body, a relatively low frequency. Then there is the level of emotions, a higher frequency. Hi, Amy. Higher still is the level of the mind. And the highest of all is the level of the spirit. Some Christians, some spiritualists call the soul, or the personality, the consciousness. To differentiate between all those different levels, lots of spiritualists call them bodies. So, apart from the physical body and the shell which carries our personality, our consciousness, our soul, we also have an emotional body, a mental body, and a spiritual body. And all of these bodies exist at exactly the same time within the outer physical frame, the shell that carries this all. But it's all at different frequencies. All have their own electrical force fields, for want of a better words. And I do apologize for the sci-fi. I'm a big lover of sci-fi and anything Stargate, Star Trek, Star Wars, force fields around the bodies. That's what makes sense in my simple mind's eye. And although these force fields cannot normally be seen by the physical eye, they can be photographed with special cameras. And when this is done, they are seen to form a beautiful cloud of light of different colors around the body. They appear to be at least 7 different layers within this cloud, the 4 of which we have spoken about, the 4 bodies, and the 3 intermediate ones, which, for the want of a better name, we shall call or refer to now as the interfaces. A good modern computer term where hopefully people understand. Hiya, Shirley. The cloud of light is usually called the aura of the person, and there are mediums and there are tunatives and empaths with special gifts. Clairvoyants often see one of them, where people can actually see the auras. I mentioned my mum, Ashley Mills, another talented medium there, was therefore giving the description about the different colors and the different stages of evolution even, and the different things that people are going through, which is why our aura, despite those core colors, is different at every person at different times of the day as well as in their life. Now, I believe that all of these layers extend for different distances from the body. I don't know a lot about this, and I'm going to go back to another conversation I've had with people that talk about them being generally the aura is around half an inch around the body. The innermost one could be up to several feet from the outermost. Now, there are famous mediums throughout history, and if you Google this, where people have had a go at measuring their aura, particularly after photographs have been taken. And there was a couple of famous mediums that had their outermost spiritual layer measured, allegedly at around 18 feet from their body. Now, I've attended and I've been witness to lots of different workshops on the aura and color over the years. Ashley Mills workshops, my mum as well. Lots of different people that understand color. Lots of my circle leaders talk about color. Jill Hay used to give color readings and pick up colors on people. You could argue that, therefore, this different shape, size, and colors is like a fingerprint. It's absolutely unique to the person at the time. When spiritualists and when I talk about spiritual vibrations of a person, of me, of the person I'm reading for, what is it that we're actually talking about? I think we're talking about the aura, we're talking about the energy field, we're talking about the chakras. All of this, for me, makes sense when we now understand vibrations. But each of the spiritual beings from any dimension will have their own vibrations, which can only be sensed by human beings, whether or not they know they're mediumistic or not. Hi there, Benny. You're on my TV and there's no chat screen on, but now on my phone. Hi, Benny. Great to have you with us. Okay, so that was vibrations. Hopefully, I haven't lost you. I tried to keep it at my basic understanding of science, but for me, everything I learnt about science, everything I learnt about spiritualism, became foundations for my philosophy. So, next thing I want to segue us into then is dimensions. What do we mean by dimensions? Now, we've said that everything in our universe is composed of atoms, and all of the atoms are vibrating. We've also said that the speed of the vibrations, that is the number of times that they can vibrate in a second, is called their frequency. Human beings, with our eyes, are able to pick up on this frequency, but we're only able to detect a small range of frequencies. We can also use our other senses, different frequencies again. Touch, taste, smell, hearing, and sight, all using our senses, the human interface, to detect the presence and measure that vibration, that dimension. Scientists have instruments, they have tools, and with these instruments, they can detect and measure lots of different frequencies, many more vibrations than we can with our human senses. These instruments can be used to detect even what minerals and gases are present in very, very distant star systems and other planets. What do I mean by that? Well, I can't see Wi-Fi, but I can pick up my iPhone and it can tell me there is the presence of Wi-Fi. Hiya, Natalie. No worries. Always good to have you at the party, even if you're late. So, infrared, my digital radio, all of these frequencies I can't necessarily pick up with my human senses. In our world, there is a range of frequencies far beyond the narrow range of those human senses. We've mentioned a couple there, like Wi-Fi. What about ultrasound and X-rays and radio waves, television waves, microwaves, and others? Things that we need a device or a scientific instrument to measure. Earlier on, we spoke about how difficult and complex it can be and how simple it is to meet. So when we think then about physical objects and comparing this to how we might use, I've always loved really simple analogies. So let's think again about that scientific instrument to understand what a dimension is. And for me, one of the easiest ways of understanding this was a thermometer. So I'm sure that everyone knows what a thermometer is, and you have different ways of using thermometers. I have a thermometer attached to the boiler in my house that controls the heating, perhaps a thermostat, a thermometer on the camera in my youngest son's room. All of our thermometers are different instruments, but they all measure temperature. Traditionally, I think about my traditional thermometer, like the one I have out in my garden, it will have a scale, a start and a finish point. And often at the bottom in blue on my thermometer, you would see the temperature of freezing. And at the very top of the scale in red, you would see a top range of boiling. Okay, hopefully you're all still with me. So there are lots of different thermometers, lots of different ranges. There are ones we use for cooking and measuring temperatures, and for anyone making jam, making wine, making the dinner, checking the baby's milk. All of those different instruments for measuring temperature. Now, just imagine then for a second that we have a giant instrument, something like a thermometer. My friend Ralph used to call this a vibrometer or a vibrometer. Now imagine then that this instrument measures the frequency of vibrations. And it has a scale which can measure all of the possible vibrations which exist in our known universe. We would call that range of vibrations measured a dimension. That dimension would only be the frequencies in our universe. But scientists tell us there are many, many universes. In fact, one prominent scientist has theorized that there are an infinite number of realities and universes with totally different ranges of vibrations, and therefore an infinite number of dimensions. However, the current theory, which most scientists hold, is that there are 11 known dimensions which can be mathematically and scientifically proved to exist. Spiritual philosophy also says that there are different dimensions, many dimensions. My own spiritual philosophy often focuses on the dimension I'm in now and the dimension I refer to as that place I call heaven, or the life after life, the afterlife. But at a very basic level, I have an understanding about levels and dimensions, both above where we are living right now and below. I spoke in one of the shows about the definition of heaven, and the reason we think up for heaven historically is it's a higher level of frequency. Some people have also spoke about the concept of hell being at a lower frequency and therefore below us. Within my own research and my own palette of knowledge, I've come to aware that there are at least 2 dimensions below our current and up to at least 10 above. Therefore, we are in what we commonly describe as the 3rd dimension, or 3D. So I don't want to get too deep into dimensions because I don't think we're meant to know that much about them. Otherwise, we'd all be born that knowledge. B, I don't think they're particularly important for how we live our life right now. And I constantly say that living this life, which we can only live once, one day at a time, is the most important thing. But I am going to kind of now talk a little bit about dimensions in the concept of being a medium and giving messages of people and their personalities from that place I call heaven. So, within my own spiritualist philosophy, then, and within my own knowledge, spoke about the principles of the first dimension, that being a place of absolute principles, the basic elements of physical existence. And you'll have heard this, no doubt, many, many times: fire, earth, air, and water. There is some talk about a fifth mysterious one, which has been called either Ever or Mind in certain societies. There's some great films in Hollywood about the fifth or sixth elements, but I think the first dimension, really, for me, is a basic understanding, quite crudely, is fire, earth, air, and water, an absolute basic principle. Scientists have recently spoke about dark energy or dark matter. That remains to be seen. Perhaps that is that mysterious fifth element. Now, the second dimension, then, bearing in mind that I believe that the life we're living right now is 3D, the third dimension, I think about that concept of a lower level of frequency or a lower form of vibration. For me, it is that concept of potential evil. Now, I've always said that light is more powerful than darkness, and I do believe in a place I call heaven. I don't necessarily believe in a physical place called hell, but if I believe in a place called heaven and a place of pure thought and pure love, I have to think about those people who were horrible people while they were alive and what happens to them. I've also said that I believe that there is only one life after life. But in the concept of dimensions, I believe that a lower level of frequency, a lower dimension of where we are now, would be those principles of evil, darkness. Now, that is a concept alluded to in all of the major religions. I've often spoken about the fact that my wife is Catholic. Our boys go to a Catholic school. The Catholic Church talks about the 7 deadly sins, although I'm sure there's far more than 7. This dimension also contains potential entities which Christianity, the Church of England, would talk about as perhaps fallen angels. In Islam, they talk about evil, is it djinns? You'll also hear various names of particularly dark, nasty people: Satan, Lucifer, etc. Now, I said that I believe that because of the vibrations, because of the way they've lived their lives, that is a concept that could exist. But I don't know a lot about this. I'm not a subject matter expert on it. And I said, for me, the most important thing is the 3D, the life we're living right now, and that concept of life after life. So above us, then, we look up, we think about a higher level of vibration. I think about that beautiful place as heaven, the 4th dimension. Now, most people talk about heaven as a concept for life after life, and they talk about it being a higher dimension and perhaps higher dimensions after that, all of which are home to the various sort of spiritual entities. And again, I only really understand from my own basic knowledge about heaven and the afterlife, but I'm aware that there could be many mansions within that house. My dad would sometimes talk to me, perhaps different rooms within that place I call heaven. And that's where you might hear about other types of spiritual helpers, guides, inspirers, angels, archangels, spiritual masters, ascended masters, the divine. Lots of different terms and lots of different people talk to. As a medium, when I'm giving evidence of someone's life after life, I believe that they are communicating to me from that place they call heaven, which, when they have got rid of the shackles and anchors of the physical body, is the place that that personality, that energy goes to. Right. So, according to my spiritual philosophy, then, no entity, no personality, no collective personality or energy is able to move between dimensions to influence human beings in the 3rd dimension without invite. They have to be invited in. It's the same way that I talk about the fact that if your mother, father, brother, sister, second cousin twice removed from that place called heaven, they can only come and influence you or guide you or inspire you when you invite them to do so. We are born with that wonderful gift of free will. We make these decisions. On this show, we've spoke about spiritual and psychic tools such as the spirit board or the Ouija board. And again, I've said that lightness is more powerful than darkness. But it goes back to this concept of invitation, of will, of protection, of protecting ourselves, of grounding ourselves. So I believe that no entity from any dimension then is able to influence us as human beings unless they are invited in. However, by indulging in perhaps any of those deadly sins, darker practices, it is possible to kind of contact, engage, provoke people in those dimensions. I believe that as a concept, and therefore, effectively, what people are doing is they are inviting potential harmful entities from that dimension in, and unfortunately, once they're in, they can be difficult to get rid of. And that's why I spoke about things like the Ouija board. And if you think about it just as an afterlife, if you think about your house or your flat of where you live, you have a front door, and most of us lock that. If you lock your door and you only open it to people who are invited into your house, you tend to only have people that you want in your house, and you can ask them to leave. If you leave your front door wide open or you don't lock it, you're potentially inviting uninvited guests into your house. And I think the same concept is possible within dimensions. So, although I don't believe in the so-called perception of possession, I do think that either through the way we live our lives, perhaps abuse of alcohol, drugs, other types of physical and domestic abuse, perhaps we can provoke contact with people in different realms. But actually, I think about that place as the afterlife. And I think you've got to be particularly nasty and evil to have that concept of fallen or lower level of English. But again, I also say I am not a subject matter expert on this. There are other people well gifted on me for that. But hopefully, I have planted that seed enough. There is this concept of a life after life. Most of the mediums that give messages, I believe, are giving messages from personalities, the consciousness of someone that lived in the third dimension, now crossed over that place I call heaven, and kind of that's what we're doing. If you were Adolf Hitler and you died, you perhaps didn't go to that beautiful place called heaven. Perhaps you're in a side room or a prison of your own making. Perhaps your levels of vibration were so low you're unable to effectively rise. You sunk, and that's what it means. But that would be my loose understanding of dimensions. But we just spoke about potential possession, poltergeist activity, ghosts. Well, what are ghosts? What is it people are seeing when they say they see ghosts? And how scientifically is this different from spiritualists that claim to see people resembling that evidence of a personality? So, in order to dive a little bit deeper, we have to look into the word ghost. And the word ghost is normally used when the personality of a human being whose physical body has gone, has died, appears to people who don't know that they have a possible mediumistic gift. They are seeing them. As most of us normally fear what we do not understand, and most people do not understand that the personality of someone still carries on in existence after death of the physical body, then ghosts are always the objects of fear. That's my basic understanding of it. Those with an understanding of a life after death, of that place called heaven, are perhaps less afraid of ghosts. There are no doubt those of you that go on, ghost hunts and paranormal investigations looking for ghosts because you're not scared of them. But I think the term ghost, when people don't really understand what happens after death, that perhaps describes it in a nutshell. I've already said before that the death of the physical body, we know that energy cannot be destroyed, it can be converted. The personality, the consciousness of the person is what's released and normally rises to the vibrational level, which is commonly called heaven. However, as we have said, not all personalities do so for various reasons. One of those possibilities might be that personality has a deep and emotional attachment to the place that a physical body has perhaps died. Another possibility could be that the consequences of their death were so horrific, there was a psychological impact, and they have created a bond between that place of death and their personality. Now, they don't realize, perhaps, that they are dead, that they have died. Perhaps their physical knowledge did not include an explanation of life after life, and therefore they are trapped. Some people might describe that place as limbo. Now, of course, some of this could be absolutely true, and it could be that there is still in existence. They are still not attached to their physical body. They have gone over. Perhaps that is an extension of that place I call heaven. Perhaps it is that people's personality stays where they died until they can work out what to do, until friends and family from that place I call heaven come to them. Perhaps there is unfinished business. Perhaps none of this is right. But these are some of my explanations for why some people feel they're being haunted or why they're seeing ghosts. In all of these cases, there's a likelihood, I believe, that the personality has remained tied to a particular place or to a particular person. And when that happens, there is always the possibility of ghostly manifestations and bumps and lumps in the night. But what happens when someone says that they are seeing a ghost? Well, I've already said that I think it's the personality is, in very simple terms, a vibration at a certain frequency of energy. And the energy can affect the energy of the air around it. And a very simple way of explaining that is to think about a day that you've been on a long road or a long path on a very warm, hot summer's day. As you look into the distance, you might see the heat haze rising above the road's surface, causing the air above the road to shimmer. What's happening is the heat is so intense that the radiation off the road is having an effect on the light waves that are being seen by your eyes. And so your brain is interpreting that as a shimmer. And I believe that it's the same sort of thing that happens on television, on digital telly, including when the weather is bad and the ability of, in my case, my Virgin TV box to intercept that signal is affected by the weather. So perhaps in the case of a ghost, the energy of the personality affecting the light waves in that area, and those who are particularly sensitive are likely to pick up on that interference as an actual physical shape resembling perhaps the personality of that energy. The definition of that shape will depend on the sensitivity of the individual. I believe that children and animals are particularly prone to seeing these so called ghosts or spirits. And I believe that's because I think they've come from a very similar energy. I think that most children, potentially all children, have come from that place I call heaven, and that after we've finished our bodies, we go back home to that place I call heaven. So as they're just born, they are so close, having been in that place where the energy level was so familiar, they are very sensitive. Now, gradually, with most children, they start to lose that sensitivity, either just by losing interest or growing up, or in some cultures, being ridiculed by their friends and their family for so called imaginary friends, or seeing things that other people tend to dismiss as they can't see it. Other people may be encouraged by their parents. I've spoke about being in a spiritualist family and being asked questions, challenging my communicator. Many of those people retain the natural gift in adult life, and some become mediums. Other people do with what they see fit. Over the years, my sister and I used to talk about our parents. My sister used to sometimes refer to my dad as ghost busting. He would get these calls to the church where people felt their houses were haunted. Perhaps they were seeing ghosts. My granddad wrote in some of his memoirs about going to so called haunted places. And almost always there was a supernormal answer for a supernatural phenomenon. Of course, modern spiritualism comes off the back of the Fox sisters picking up on an intelligence energy behind the knocks and the taps and the bangs in their house. But often, when there has been spirit in the house or the personality of someone that perhaps has no direct relationship to the house, often that they are just trying to be heard, trying to communicate. Sometimes it's the physical energy of the household. We spoke about drug abuse and alcohol abuse and other things that could be going on that house. And sometimes it's spirit that tells us those things. Okay. I think that's probably as much as I want to go to on that. We could probably dedicate an entire show. Maybe I'll convince my dad to come on here. My mum's been on several times, but Dad, I know you're watching tonight. Perhaps you'll come on and talk about visits to houses, moving on so-called ghosts or spirits and communicating with them. Often, I say there's a supernormal explanation for some of this. Spiritualism was born off the back of intelligent energy and so-called ghost. Mr. Happy Feet, I think the girls, the Fox Sister girls used to call him. Okay, right. I want to finish then the next 5 minutes talking a little bit about the brain and the scientific explanation for that. The very first show I did on Spiritual Psychics TV, I spoke about having a stroke, and I spoke about killing 1/3 of the middle left-hand side of my brain in a major stroke about 11 years ago. And I spoke about that affecting the right-hand side of my body. Well, I've done a little bit of research into that because there was a couple of really significant things which I find a useful scientific explanation for acts of healing. For me, one of the most important things was my neurologist, who said to me that I had had a spontaneous recovery, which he said meant there was no human intelligence involved in my recovery, but that I had. Sorry, he's taking some water, folks. And I say we are coming up to the last sort of 15 minutes of the show. So if you do have questions, folks, get them ready. Scientists, particularly medical scientists, then will tell us that there are different parts of the brain that control the different activities. And I'm going to give us a very, very quick whistle stop tour of this because I'm not a neurologist and I've never been to medical school. But most people would agree that the left-hand side of the brain is concerned with logic, reasoning and calculation, and particularly in the middle there's a lot of problem solving and analysis there, the bits that I killed off during my stroke. Whereas the right hand side of the brain is often to do with sensitivity and intuition, emotion, comparison, artistic. For some strange reason, and I say it's strange, it's probably not strange to a neurologist, the left hand side of the brain controls the right hand side of the body and vice versa. Now, because logic and reasoning are thought of often, often wrongly actually, as masculine qualities, the left-hand side of the brain is therefore often referred to, again, I believe wrongly, as the masculine side, while the right brain is feminine. I think this was just a crude scientific explanation of the energy. So, from a personal point of view, let me emphasize that masculine and feminine in this context does not necessarily tie up to the biological gender of the individual person. And I, for one, know lots of very, very logical and calculating women, and there are just as many sensitive and intuitive men, particularly within spiritualism. However, it does seem to be a fact that the side of the brain associated with masculine or feminine traits tend to be more developed in people of that same gender, but it is not always the case. And I went and looked a bit more into this, and it was fascinating for me because as a son of a trade unionist mum and grandfather, a big believer in gender equality and inclusivity, I went and did a bit more research into this because lots of people at the moment, when we're talking about boys and girls from early age, talk about toys. And I've had this with my own children, and I won't mention names. People have criticized me for allowing my boys to play with dolls and prams or the kitchen, saying these are for girls. And of course, it's absolutely ridiculous because they need to eat, they need to know how to kitchen, and I want them to be hopefully parents one day, and they need to understand these things. But there's still that stereotype, I think, in society. Now, some adults decry this as gender stereotyping, and they try to force children to use non-specific toys, those which can interest either sex, boys and girls. And of course, welcome to 2021. Lots of people being encouraged to own their own identity and to say how they would like to be perceived. And I'm absolutely for those rights. But of course, with very young children, they're still developing lots of what it is to make sense. And I personally think that our soul, our consciousness, it's genderless. It's the physical body which associates our gender, and it's often that the reason that male and females are compatible is for a biological reason. It's to reproduce. But that's probably another show for another day. I know that people and parents are allowing children to decide what sex they consider to be, and I respect that right. Equally, the way they want to be dressed, and again, I'm not going to prevent my kids. If my boys suddenly want to wear a dress to school, I'd probably support them for wearing a dress to school. But this concept of boys and girls is very interesting when you look at the natural development then of the child's brains, particularly about the left hand side, the right hand side, and where scientists talk about masculine and feminine. It might lead to a very confused generation of adults, hopefully well informed adults that can make decisions. So, come back off my tangent, back to spiritualism. As far as spiritualism is concerned, the difference between the right and left hand side of the brain, I believe, is equally important, because I believe that mediumship is concerned with sensitivity to vibrations, and sensitivity is governed by the right hand side of the brain. Two quick things on that. I killed the middle left hand side of my brain. I'm more reliant on the right hand side now. When I was 25, that was a game changer for me in my own development as a medium. Some people might have said it's because of that near death experience, equally because I was using more of that brain. And I think Dad will have to confirm. I'm sure my dad was told by a few mediums and healers that I would start to work more as a medium afterwards. Right. The other interesting thing for me growing up within spiritualism is that it's far more likely to see women who are more sensitive than men, with the right brain being more developed, becoming more interested in spiritualism earlier on in the first place, and then generally going on to train as become mediums. And in fact, certainly in the UK and parts of the USA, lots of congregation tend to be more than 50% men and 50% women. You do tend to see more women as practicing as mediums and more women in the congregation, perhaps because they're more sensitive. The world is changing. You know, I'm 38 now. I'm only talking about my own personal last 38 years experience. To give more personal experience to that, over the last few years, then thinking about 38 years, let's say, of Wimbledon Spiritualist Church, my limited exposure to the world, this isn't always the case. And in fact, when you think about TV mediums or so-called celebrity mediums, why is it that there are more men on TV, so-called celebrity, top sort of mediums, than women? I mean, in the UK, you've got people like Psychic Sally that wouldn't call himself necessarily a spiritualist, but actually, I still think that some of this is still about discrimination, and it perhaps goes back to those sort of caveman sort of instincts of, the man is the hunter, gatherer, and provider, and actually there are less men doing it, but actually they're the ones that are getting on. Again, another conversation for another day, because I believe that everyone has the ability to do this. Everyone has the opportunity to get involved as a medium, to work in this sensitivity. But I think it's a very interesting conversation. And of course, growing up around it, it not only has it helped with my inclusivity, it's also helped me to see people as those individuals. I didn't even know what homophobia was until much later in life, because for me, people love people. You fall in love with people. Gender, as I say, was an important biological thing for the reproduction of children. I didn't even realize there was such thing as homophobia until much later in life. And I think that within spiritualism, I've been lucky to see that, to have really inclusive, diverse community that have helped normalize individuality. And it's a really important thing. So, folks, we're coming up to the last 5-10 minutes of the show. Thank you very much for bearing it with me. I hope this has been an interesting sort of teaser into the world of science and spiritualism. Caveat at the beginning of the show that it's spiritualism and science, in my honest, humble opinion. It's what's created my spiritual philosophy, and it's what led to most of the conversations we've had on this show. I've enjoyed seeing some of your comments sort of come in, and for the next 5 minutes or so, we're going to surrender over to questions. So I've been scribbling around on my notes and talking to the camera. I've actually not been paying much attention to the screen. So, Richard, you'll have to tell me, have we had any questions come in at the moment? Richard, you're on mute. Hope he's still there. Our producer behind the scenes, always doing a fantastic job. I know he's on silence at the moment. Let me see if I can bring up then some of the questions myself. I've got Natalie here saying that she was a bit late to the party. Well, hi, Natalie. Okay. Hopefully we're still live. I might have been talking to myself for the last hour. Okay. Let's see what I can see. So there's only 21 people watching right now. Okay. Yep, I think we're still live then. Right. Teresa Thatcher says, great discussion. What I heard is late logging in. So I think we it's funny, I could have been sitting there for minutes. I think I'm still live because I've just opened YouTube on my phone. Christine Williams says, it's been a wonderful evening, so enjoyable as always. Teresa said she grew up in a Catholic environment and spiritualism was not allowed, always resisted the Catholic faith. Stace, according to who thought, Samantha, that's a question. If we don't make the choice, who makes it for us? Julie Caswell, modern spiritualism, the Fox sisters, free, strong women. Yeah, absolutely. Samantha Lawrence says, our paths in life will lead us to where we are supposed to go. Yeah, I'm a great believer in that. True. Stace says she wanted to be a nurse and then they made the choice to be a mum and never made it to nursing. Instead, I'm following a different path and now I'm on my third path because that one didn't work out. That's lovely, Stace. Thanks for sharing. Christine Woodham says, ask your dad about our experience at the Elizabethan House, now a hotel in Stroud in Surrey. Your dad and I spent a very interesting evening settling energies in that place. I'd love to revisit. Well, Christine, perhaps we'll get you on the show with Dad. You can beam in from Spain. Samantha Lawrence, yes to all transition. Teresa Thatcher, I wanted to be a car mechanic, but this was frowned upon when I was younger. Again, I think that stereotype of male and females. Still haven't had contact from Richard in the studio, so I hope he's okay. Stace says we think differently, and that's all okay. We wouldn't do this for us. It's all the same. Yeah, that's true. Stereotypes drives me mad. Teresa, yeah, do you agree? Last night there was a tap on my door and no one there. In the past, when this happened, my dad passed soon after. Okay. Synchronicity, things happening for the right reason. Samantha Lawrence says, yes, Stace, I believe that every choice to the past we take from our own choices. Yeah. Alison says this week's guest is Bill Hughes. I thought that. All right. Did the show say this week's guest is Bill Hughes? Yeah, that was 2 weeks ago. Sorry about that. I said I've not been getting all the comments, folks. I'm going to give Richard a ring, and in fact, Dad, if you're still listening, give Richard a ring on his mobile phone and just make sure everything's all right. Julie, Bill Hughes was on here 2 weeks ago. You can find that on YouTube. Alison, Samantha Loris, I do stay sadly. Environment can change personality. Yeah, definitely. Intention is everything. Yeah, too true. Julie Caswell, intention really important. Inviting negative energy has nothing to do with the Ouija board. The board is just the tool. Yeah, the board is the tool. What I mean is, it's that concept of opening the front door, Julie. You can't just invite, but you need to do it with a bit of discipline, a bit of protection, and know who your communicator is. Samantha says we're all born pure, innocent, and good. Interactions in nature nurture our changes. Yeah, absolutely. Stacey says she doesn't believe in hell, but I do believe there is evil in the world. Yep. And as I say, I think about it more of just at their lower level of energy, a bit like what Ashley Mills was saying. Julie Caswell, I wouldn't use the word evil or hell. Yep, I think we share that. Stace says in shamanism there are 3 lower levels, middle and upper worlds. The lower world holds darkness, fears, and ignorance. That's really interesting, Stace. I'll have to go off and do a bit of research into that then myself. Samantha says lovely, interesting, incredible. Thank you, Samantha. My thermal thermometer was giving us some amazing results for spirit communication. Julie, you're really great at working with tools. I'll have to get you back on the show talking about some of that. Benny says it's interesting. Thank you. Terry, the mechanic spanner, haha, she's laughing around. Right. Julie says you can look it up. There was a film about it. Alison was saying it's very powerful and dangerous. 3 of us with 5 pieces. Right. Just seeing if there's other questions here. There's been an experiment done to weigh the human soul. The results were 21 grams. Yeah, very interesting scientific studies, wasn't there, about the body becoming ever so slightly lighter. Now, some scientists say that was the gases escaping, but I like to believe that was the energy of the consciousness. Terry, glad that she was able to get some of it, being one of the rare crystals. Sally said some rarer than diamonds. Got my unicorn horns for the girls. I'm just looking back at some of your comments, folks. Lots of highs and hellos. Hi Ash, I had a photo with my mum and dad in the back. So Kim says she had a photo of her mum and dad in the background, and my mum and dad are in the spirit world. I showed a few friends the other day, and it disappeared, never to be seen again. That's interesting, Kim. Thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, right. I was in Circle as I am every Friday. We have free will and free choices. Yeah, absolutely. Who was that? It was Samantha. We have the free will choice to make our own totally, and some of us have had less fortunate upbringing, therefore make choices not so good. But in the end, transition. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Stace says, do you think, Ashley, there are different alternative realities in different dimensions that allow us to live out the lives that we didn't get to live out through our choices we made? I mean, it's a brilliant question, Stace. I do think that's possible. I don't really understand it. I've always said I loved sci-fi. One of my favorite sci-fi shows years ago, as I was a kid, teenager, was called Sliders, and they used to slide between the various alternative sort of realities and dimensions. I've also seen a couple of episodes of Star Trek and Stargate, where most of these sci-fi shows often go into that concept of, for every decision creates a new opportunity, a new decision. So, yeah, I think it's possible. When you're nearly finished, or Pamela was in Circle. Well, thanks for joining us after Circle. Christine says she would love that. Good. We just need to work on Dad then, get him on the show too. We are coming towards the end of the show. I don't know if I've been cut off from the studio in Portsmouth. I do want to give you folks a couple of updates on some interesting things as well. So I'm going to do that first of all, and I'll quickly check then the Facebook questions as well. So Facebook, any questions on Facebook? Tim again, we speak about the science in comparison to the mediumship. Medical researchers are studying clear audience in comparison to schizophrenia. Yeah, some really interesting stuff, Tim, going on. And King's University had recently written to Wimbledon Spiritualist Church about getting some mediums in an MRI machine and having a look at the brain patterns when they're allegedly receiving sort of communication. So we'll do that again. Could be dedicated to an entire another show. Okay, I think we're still live, and I think people are still listening. So I just wanted to tell people about and plant a couple of seeds about a couple of other sort of interesting things going on. And one of them was a request to talk a little bit about life after death promotions. So a few of you have heard me talk about life after death promotions and my granddad. And I want to tell people just a little bit about the history of that and kind of what's inspired me. So I want to take you back to 1982, sort of 39 years ago. And my grandfather, who was Derek Robinson, the outgoing president of Wimbledon Spiritualist Church, he and some of his friends were having a conversation. And at the time, there was a guy called Gordon Higginson, who lots of you will be very familiar with, a fantastic evidential and physical medium, wonderful healer, a great lecturer, also the president of the SNU at one time. And Gordon Higginson and my grandfather were talking about getting spiritualism out there, taking spiritualism out to the people, with an intention of getting those people into spiritualist churches, but sharing the truths of spiritualism, sharing their knowledge of life after death. And at that moment, they brought in two other friends, Jesse Nason and Doris Stokes, and they formed Life After Death Promotions with the mission to share their combined knowledge and truths of spiritualism and life after death and take spiritualism out to the people. And over the last 38 years, my granddad, Gordon, Jesse, Doris, and all the hundreds of different volunteers and mediums that have been involved in events have done exactly that. They've taken spiritualism all around the world, and they've gone out to the world where there's already spiritualism and worked with those people. Most recently in Japan and America, they hired theatres and River Thames canal boats and did dinner and dances with spiritualism and evidence of mediumship, and hired theatres and halls and scout huts and took it all over the place. And over the last 20 odd years, grew into the opportunity to take spiritual people and spiritualists away on a little holiday, give them a holiday and get them socializing with like-minded people. And we started as a spiritual retreat, the concept of Spirit Seeker, known as a few other different names in its sort of early days. But the idea was to have these little spiritual psychic development weekends, little spiritual retreats in and around the South Coast and other places where we could get these like-minded people together and do exactly that, share the knowledge and truths of spiritualism. And I'm really pleased and proud to be continuing that legacy with my family, my wife, my sister, and my mum and dad. And I've got some exciting news which will be available over this weekend. The first thing is that our next event, which is taking place in October this year and is sold out. Fortunately, there'll be 2 more events within close succession. So we've actually got 3 spiritual and psychic weekends over the next 18 months. And our event in March is going to be a very exciting collaboration with Spiritual Psychics TV. And all of your favorite presenters, hosts, and demonstrators on this platform are coming together. The vast majority of us are coming together to share and give service at a spiritual and psychic weekend retreat in Bournemouth in March next year. Now, the price is going to be about £275. And although that may sound a little expensive, that is based on 2 people sharing a room. It includes a 3-course meal on the Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night. It includes free choices and 3-course meal for breakfast on the Saturday, Sunday, and Monday morning. It includes afternoon tea, coffee, and cake with some biscuits and some cake. And it includes a free bar every night from 6 till 9 o'clock. And then also included in that price, because we have exclusive use of a wonderful hotel on the Bournemouth seafront, is that all of your events, all of your demonstration, all of your lectures, all of your workshops are all free. They're all included within that price. There's often 2, 3, or even 4 things happening at the same time. The only additional price is if you go for your own private sort of one-to-one therapies or your one-to-one sort of readings. Otherwise, everything's included. So watch this space. For those of you that are a VIP and patron of the Spiritual Psychics TV, on Sunday night in the VIP Zoom chat, we will be giving you all exclusive access to the website, and then we will be shortly afterwards launching the brand new website, which will tell you all about Spirit Seeker and how to book your rooms. So some really exciting bits and pieces going on, and I really look forward to telling you more about that over the next coming days. The other thing is to bear in mind on this show, on this platform, Saturday night at 8 o'clock, you've got Mediumship live streaming on Facebook and YouTube. And also what you've got is Sunday morning divine service at 11 a.m. With my mum and dad live from Women and Spiritualist Church. And then very shortly after, you've got the beautiful, wonderful personalities and ladies on the couch with some free private readings and a few other bits and pieces going on. So I don't have the videos to show you on screen. Sadly, my connection to the studio has been cut off, but I do believe we're still streaming because I can see some of the live chat questions. And it may be a case that you're just going to have to switch off the YouTube feed because for some reason we've had some technical problems tonight, and I can only apologise you for that. Friends, folks, and I've got family on as well. It's been wonderful here chatting with you. I'm sorry if I couldn't see all of the questions, or some manually scrolling through Facebook and YouTube. If I haven't answered something and you want me to, please direct that to me at Ash Robinson Medium on Instagram or Facebook, or indeed follow up with one of the other Spiritual Psychics TV channels. But it's 9:25. I think it's time to switch off and have a good night. Friends, it's been wonderful to be on the show with you tonight. Stay safe and remember to disconnect this stream. Hopefully I'll be able to do that. God bless you all. Take care. Bye.